Hi, I'm Jennifer Potter, Executive Director of Be Well Texas. Too many people are struggling alone these days, and alcohol and drug deaths are increasing. We started Be Well Texas to offer high-quality, science-based addiction treatment and recovery services anywhere, even at home. We provide compassionate, caring support virtually or in person. In many cases, there is no cost for treatment if you don't have insurance. Really. Welcome to Be Well Texas. We're glad you're here.
I want to talk about something that's been really exciting around here, and that is our partnership with our friends at Ford. Ford Motor Company and your North Texas Ford, or your Texas Ford dealers have announced an expanded sponsorship of the UIL State Championships, solidifying Ford as the official automotive sponsor of the UIL. As part of the new commitment, Ford will now support all UIL extracurricular activities, including athletic, academic, and music state championship competitions. In addition to the sponsorship, Ford is celebrating the 20th anniversary of the prestigious Built Ford Tough Player of the Week Award and Player of the Year Award. This campaign has become one of the most celebrated in Texas high school sports, recognizing standout athletes, student athletes, for their on-field performance, leadership, and commitment to excellence. Ford will honor some of the most decorated players who have received the award over the years, with a special focus being on their achievements both in high school and beyond. Guys like Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Kyler Murray, all former Built Ford Tough Players of the Year, and we're partnering with them to amplify that. Dave Campbell's Texas Football, we're going to be amplifying the celebration through our partnership through all of our different platforms, so Texan Live, as well as here on this program and over the course of our social media as well, and TexasFootball.com. We're really, really excited to be partnering with Ford to help celebrate all of the things in Texas high school sports across the landscape. So more to come on that. There's more information on TexasFootball.com, but we're so thrilled to announce that partnership in Texas and the Texas Ford Dealers' expanded partnership as the official automotive sponsor of or partner of the UIL State Championships. We certainly are very, very excited about the future there.
Hello and welcome into a special edition of the Dave Campbell's College Football Podcast. Got your regulars here. I'm your host, Carter Yates. That is senior college writer Mike Craven. We are joined by Matthew Bartlett at The Roost. You can find him on X at The Roost. They are the number one source for Rice sports news, so no better person to talk to for a full preview of the Rice 2025 football season. Matthew, we got to start with the new head coach, Scott Abel. Comes in from Davidson. What have you made of his first offseason on the job?
I mean, has anybody ever just I guess there is out of the gate, just oh man, this is going to be a disaster. Maybe there's a one-off, but right now we're still in the honeymoon period, right now, shaking hands, kissing babies, everybody's happy. He's a really upbeat, personal guy. There's guys that you just talk to and have that gravity with them. So he said all the right things. He's done all the right things. He's brought in a good amount of talent reworking this roster. So far, not really any negatives to speak of on South Main, which is refreshing given how the past couple of years have gone.
What were your initial thoughts and just concerns, positives about bringing the option to Rice and kind of zigging where a lot of this state kind of zags with the air raid and the passing offenses?
Well, the option is not entirely new to Rice. If you look at Rice's history, this has been something that they've gone back to, and even some of their, successful years under Ken Hatfield use a variation of this. So, and then every time Rice goes to hire a new head coach, or has in the past, 20 years, there's a serious conversation of, should we go back to the option? And it's gone hit or miss, back and forth, but it makes a lot of sense. When I talk to folks familiar with the process going in, they ask, who should we hire? And I'm like, I don't have a name for you, but if you're going to hire a coach, it needs to be somebody like X, Y, Z. And I think somebody that does something a bit different and creative is what you need to do at Rice. We tried to outmuscle people to totally bastardize what Bloomgren's scheme was the past couple years. Like, not that simple, but that's kind of where it was, and it didn't work. So going different, going option, going this variation of the option because it's a bit more unique, has a more bells and whistles. I think it's honestly the perfect fit for where Rice is and what Rice needs to be.
Can you kind of explain some of those bells and whistles on the option? Because when I'm picturing in my head, it's not like a triple option. It's not Army and Navy. I've heard Craven report when he talked to Scott Abel, and I'm sure, Matthew, he's told you this too. Think more Oregon in the late 2000s, shotgun option a little bit. Can you just kind of explain in football terms what Rice fans can expect from the scheme?
Well, if you ask him to describe his offense, he'll call it a gun option. He won't call it a triple option. I don't think I've heard him use the word triple yet. And what are we, 6 months on the job? So it's not in the lexicon. I think where it's a little bit different in the traditional triple option, you got the quarterback under center. You'll have a read to hand it off to the first back, the second back, or to keep it. So those are your three options. In this offense, being out of the gun, usually don't have three options. Usually you have two on the initial read, and then they'll do a lot of work with what they call their slots, which are kind of your inside wide receiver coming across the formation and things like that. So whereas in a triple option, you're running up the middle or off tackle, in this option, there's a lot more east to west because you're utilizing the speed of those guys off the edges, and doing that opens up the interior for the quarterback to keep it and do some interesting things.
For high school dorks, go watch Gunter play football.
There's some good option football in the state of Texas.
Yeah, Gunter kind of runs it out of the pistol, and it's not exactly the same, obviously, but it is pretty similar. What's your read on it, on Scott as just as a person, as a leader, as a figurehead for Rice University? How has he fit in with the culture so far?
He gets it, man. His whole thing coming in is he's won places at William and Lee and Davidson where no one had ever won before. Small private institutions have the recruiting challenges like Rice on a much harder scale at the lower levels. So he's kind of seen this road before, and it's a fit there. And then he's just done all the right things. And one of the things I thought was most interesting, I actually sat down with him this week and I said, what is the thing that you are most happy to give up now that you're the head coach? Because he had a half staff almost at Davidson, a lot less people. 5 years ago, he's booking his own rental cars, like just smaller operations. And he said, you know what? Like, not having a position group to coach is actually something that I'm glad I don't have to do. He's like, I thought I would miss it. And like, I do kind of miss it, but at the same time, it lets me be more present and be in all of these other meeting rooms and get to know these 100 some odd people on the roster and not limit myself. So I think those kind of things, his adjustment to the head coaching world at a institution of this size versus, the lower levels, and then his just leadership ability, people gravitate to him. And I think it's going really well.
When you say he gets it, because he has won at places where traditionally, you mentioned it was really hard to win at. I think for Rice diehards listening to this podcast, they understand where some of the institutional challenges at Rice, the high academics, make it harder to get players in the transfer portal, even get them in the high school recruiting ranks. But for us that cover it more statewide, we look at Rice and say, hey, they're in the American Athletic Conference with UTSA, North Texas, and some other teams. What are some of those challenges that Abel has a track record of succeeding in spite of?
I think what's the easiest thing to look at is if you look at his offense, it's really been quarterback proof. If you go back over the decade since he's been coaching at the college football level, he's done it with guys that are what you think of with the traditional option quarterback. They're quicker. They might not throw the ball very, very often, but they can run like the wind. And he's gone the other way where this offense is thrown 15, 20 times a game. And his guys have thrown for 200, 250 yards through the air during the game. He's been able to adapt his offense. And the way that he described it to me, he said, my core playbook doesn't change. I'm running the same thing. How I flavor that for my personnel is what makes it look different to everyone else. But we know we're running the same 5 plays, if that makes sense. So I think the ability to truly adapt and not square peg, round hole, say, more of a, I'm going to put this guy here and he just got to do it. My experience so far is there's a lot less of that. It's more holistic, looking at what can everybody do, and now let's put those pieces together.
The new EA video game is coming out in a couple of weeks, and I have to imagine Rice is one of the teams that a lot of people are going to play with, especially in Dynasty. Right, you can kind of build a program up. You get a cool offense. Running the ball has been pretty fun in the latest iterations of this game. How much do you think that helps, just from a branding, marketing perspective and a recruiting perspective, to just kind of be different, just to kind of have your own kind of flavor to what you're doing?
I mean, it can't hurt, right? Like nobody's tagging me on social media and telling me, "Hey, I can't wait to rebuild my Rice dynasty on college football." Last year, I just didn't happen. This offseason, I've had multiple people that I know and don't know, tagging me. It's like, this offense is going to be so fun. I can't wait. I chatted with Abel and he said, I wonder where they got the playbook. I'm interested to see, he was saying, how accurate it is. So we'll find out. Well, once we get it out and people are playing it, I will have to circle back and give you the notes on how Rice is this Rice offense in the video game.
So let's dive into some of the personnel on offense. You mentioned Abel's offenses are quarterback proof. They can kind of transition based on what the quarterback can do best. Who do you think the starting quarterback is going to be for Rice?
It's going to be Chase Jenkins.
All right.
That's technically still an open competition, but when Jenkins came in as a quarterback, was a great high school quarterback in Houston, transitioned to wide receiver for a year and came back. And when he came back, you just kind of saw, I was like, oh, this guy is lightning quick, can create on his own, has that natural bent for the running game, and he's a pretty good thrower of the football. So it just kind of made sense. And the spring was just kind of getting everybody up to speed. And at this point, it's just kind of like waiting for him to seize that job and really fully get all the reps that it takes to, what read am I supposed to do here, and being patient, knowing that I don't have to do everything, this is still a young quarterback, is something that you need to learn. So I anticipate by the time we get midway through fall camp, he'll be named the starter. Right now, it's him and Drew DeValier that are in the competition.
What do you think his running back stable looks like, and who do you see emerging as the lead back, or is this offense one of those that doesn't have a lead back and it'll be purely stable, committee, just whatever the right read is?
So Abel's handled it a couple different ways in the past. What I've seen looking at some of his old teams is he usually will go probably about 3 deep at the running back room. There's going to be 3 guys that are consistently getting touches, and they do like to ride the hot hand, but in general, there's going to be a lead guy who emerges. Right now, that lead guy is Quentin Jackson. He has kind of he's the lone holdover, really. If you look at this offense, he was more of a scat back and a specialist kick returner in prior seasons, but has receiving ability, has a lot of, experience now being a senior. So he's kind of the guy, but he is a little bit smaller. Rice doesn't really have a ton in the way of big bodied guys. They went and grabbed Carson Morgan, who's a transfer from Kansas, that I think is going to have to be in the mix. And then they are really, really excited about the freshmen that they have on campus, both local guys coming in. DeAndre Hardiman is one of them, and Tyvon Byers. So I think those 4 guys are going to be pretty active, and I would not be surprised if we get to October and one of those freshmen has carved out, a large role.
Let's go strengths and weaknesses on this offense. What do you think the position group of strength is, and what is the position group you got a lot of question marks about?
I think probably the offensive line I feel the best about. Okay. But I'm putting a lot of trust in what I've heard from the coaching staff and their evaluations. It's really hard to hide a bad offensive line, but with Rice running the option, they haven't done a lot of good on goods this year because the Rice defense is going to be playing a lot of option. So it's been hard to get a good read, but their pickup, and when I ask anybody on the coaching staff, what group, what unit, what player has had the best spring, has looked most impressive this summer, they all come back to offensive line. Everyone says offensive line. So if everyone's saying it, I kind of am curious and starting to believe. I think they might not have, the 6'4", 360-pound guys, but I think their mobility is a lot better, and I think that's going to fit this offense like a glove. So I feel really good about the offensive line. Quarterback would probably be my other one. I do not know, other than Aaron Turner, Cincinnati transfer, who they're going to throw the football to. Which, if they're throwing 8 times a game, it might not matter. So that's okay. And that goes in the calculus of who they're going to start at quarterback. But Landon Ransom coming back from injury. Aaron Turner was kind of the do-it-all guy this spring, but they got a lot of other guys in that room who either have never played college football or have, been a special teams guy, a fringe guy. Tyson Thompson is a guy who had a good run at Houston Christian, but has been hurt for the past 2 years. So you just a bunch of guys that you don't know, and you didn't see him a ton in spring.
When Abel was originally hired, it kind of surprised me that they went in that direction. Not that they went FCS, but I thought if they went FCS, they'd go like a Texas guy who did the air raid, who threw the ball 50, 60 times a game. But the more you think about it, the more it feels like the offensive line point's a good one. Because like at Rice, you're not going to be able to recruit the 6'7", 300-pound bookend offensive tackle or the 6'4", 330-pound road grader. But it does feel like this offense allows just an average offensive line to be a good quality offensive line because you're not asking them to do as much. What are your thoughts on just kind of this system and how it'll fit the type of player Rice can get to campus?
I think it makes a lot of sense. It's one of those things that you don't need. One of the things that made me so interested in their implementation of the West Coast style kind of offense that they put in under Mike Bloomgren. It's one of those offenses where if everyone does their job, wins their one-on-one, like it works. Like you've seen it. Like it's the NFL offenses are based off of this, or at least traditionally were. So like it works, but like time and time again, a college student is not a professional NFL athlete, and they don't do their job every time, and it just disintegrates. I think Rice being able to say, hey, we can't field a roster, the Alabamas or the Texas, where we have 110 blue chips who are basically going to be NFL players, and everybody's going to be in the right place at the right time. So how can you minimize that? How can you work around that? I think this is an offense that you take the onus of, who has to do everything right away from 11 guys having to all execute it correctly, which you still do. But if you can get the line moving in the right way and the quarterback makes the right read, 2 big ifs, but once you get those, you're going to get positive yardage. You're going to move the football. And that's really the heart of it, is you're taking away all those layers of complications of the one fail system that the West Coast and kind of some of the more traditional pro style offenses are.
So I think we've covered the offense, most fun offensive scheme to play with on the new video game coming out this summer. What about the defense? What did you think of elevating John Kay, former North Shore state champion head coach, from linebackers coach to defensive coordinator?
Is this the most like no-brainer hire in the state?
It felt like it, at least to us, because we've watched John Kay win 6 state championships.
When Abel made the announcement, it was like, oh, he gets it. Right. Like it was like, that's a sign of a guy who can come into a new state and figure it out by making that decision for sure.
Same day he went to Buc-ee's too.
Right.
Like the perfect Texas day.
Yeah. It was just one of those things. It's one of those things that he came into the industry, and the talk around these circles were like, so he's going to be the head coach at Rice when like Bloomgren's gone. Right. Like that was an open secret. And then the Bloomgren tenure ended maybe more quickly at that point than anybody was thinking of. And so, maybe Kay doesn't jump to the head coach role, but as Abel told me, he's the head coach of my defense. I asked Abel, how involved do you want to be on defense? And he said, I'm going to be aware of what we're doing. I want to be, cognizant of that. But John Kay is the head coach of my defense, and he's running all day-to-day ops, and he's in charge of everything. And he's just kind of delegated that. He's like, I'm going to find a guy who's good at his job and people want to follow, and I'm going to let him do it all. And that's more or less how they divvied it up. And, I can't hate on the strategy because Kay is a smart dude.
How different do you think it looks compared to last year's defense in terms of just how they line up, kind of the overall scheme?
I don't think it's going to be a ton different. The way that Kay described it to me is he's like, everybody has their own bents and flavors and things that they like to add in. So I think base downs and what you're looking at with that traditional, two backer with that hybrid linebacker safety roving around, I think you're still going to see basically that. A lot of 4 down fronts, 3 with that edge guy off the edge. It's going to be the same look and feel. What I'm interested to see is how does Kay call it? Does he get more aggressive, perhaps, or Rice was traditionally under Brian Smith willing to kind of sit back and let guys come to them. Is Kay going to call it the same way? So far, it's looked pretty similar. Can't distinguish too much, but how does that look once you get bullets flying? It's going to be interesting.
Any read on positional strengths or weaknesses? Kind of like the same thing we did for offense.
I think they got the best 2 linebackers in, I don't know if I can say the state, but they are in that conversation. I think Ty Morris and Andrew Alway are just going to be rocks. Alway is a 14th year college football player. Maybe 5, maybe 6. I don't know. He's been around so long. He was up there, and then Ty Morris, I believe, led the team on in tackles last year, and is one of the guys that he's the guy that he was the rising star everybody picked like 3 years ago, and then he's become that superstar. So those 2 guys, the linebacker core, they're not going to come off the field very often. Things that I'm curious about, I'll be honest, I was straight up terrified of the corners going into spring ball. They brought in Amari Porter from Stanford, who played some safety, played some corner, not a lot of experience. They brought in a couple JUCO guys, and then they thought Max Ahoya was going to get his JUCO waiver with everything that went through extended. He ended up not getting eligibility that everybody thought he was. So Rice really started from ground zero at corner, which is not good in a scheme where you're just like, okay, win on an island, and that's what this is. So I'm really nervous. And again, Omari Porter was the guy that almost to a man had the best spring of anybody on defense. He was a guy that consistently, like, they didn't know if he was going to be a corner or a safety or if he could be a starting guy. They left spring feeling really confident about him. And then they added Kerry Crump from Houston Christian, originally from Michigan State. And he's just a dude. So I think those 2 guys, by the time you got to the end of the spring, you have 2 starting corners. I'm still kind of nervous because I haven't seen him do it at this level on the field, and it's a big ask. I feel better than I did, but that's kind of where I'm nervous.
Just looked it up. Alway joined Rice as a walk-on in 2020. So this would be his 5th
there you go.
season. Wait.
It feels
6?
like longer. Yeah, let's count.
Yeah, I think 6.
We're counting on you to do the math, Matthew. You're the Rice guy. We're assuming you have a little bit more math knowledge than we do.
It hasn't rubbed off that way. I don't know what it is. It must not be taken.
It feels like Rice has had some pretty good edge rushers the last few years on their defense. You think transfer Michael Daly can be one of those guys, or how do you kind of see the pass rush shaping up?
So Michael Daly's interesting. So he signed with BYU at a high school, went on his mission for 2 years, and then came back. So he's married. He has a kid. So he's a sophomore, air quotes, but this is a grown adult. Like, this is not one of the kids. So he was more of a situational guy last year where you put him in, okay, go get the quarterback. And he did really well in that role. He's going to be challenged this year to step up into a more full-time role. I feel pretty good about that. I think the guy that I'm most interested in, I think if he can step up and fill this role, I think it's a GK Adele. He is the transfer coming in from Dartmouth. Last year, they added Charlie Lewis, who was the runner-up for the Bushnell Cup, which is the best defensive player in the Ivy League. Adele won the Bushnell Cup. So he's kind of coming in with a bunch of experience playing all across the line that I think they're really going to lean into being the pass rushing specialist, the guy who can get to the quarterback. They've had a lot of success. Coleman Coco from a couple years ago, another guy, of just finding a great Ivy League pass rusher and letting him go win. And so that's what they're banking on this year. I think those 2, Daly and Adele, that's easy to put together. Probably the core of their pass rush this year.
Across the entire team, offense, defense, special teams, as it stands right now, or let's do a prediction. Let's go projection here. Who is the MVP by season's end, and who was the X factor by season's end on this roster?
This season hangs on the arm and legs of Chase Jenkins or whoever plays quarterback. I think the reality is, and that's so easy to like, it's a quarterback. Yeah. But the
It's
defense,
true all the time.
yeah. Well, the defense that Rice has is really senior. Even the guys who are new to Rice, they're bringing in and plugging in a bunch of third year and fourth year players. Like the defense, I feel pretty good is going to be solid. Like they might not be the best in the conference, but they're going to be fine. The offense is so young. And I think if you look at this team, we'll see what the portal does, but by 2026, next year, not this coming season, but next year, like they'll have gotten all the kinks figured out. And we're going to see if this offense at its fullest form, and really 2026, I think, is the year to evaluate, like, what's the ceiling on what this can do in this league. In 2025, like, it's going to be asking a young quarterback with a bunch of young skill players and a young offensive line to do a lot of things. And that, if he can elevate the rest around him and he can run this offense as able once it executed, you can hide a bunch of the warts and a bunch of the growing pains, because there are going to be growing pains.
I'm so excited to watch this offense. But I have one more defensive question. So my family's from Bertram, which doesn't have a high school. So you either go to Liberty Hill or Burnet. Everybody goes to Liberty Hill because they have a better football team. But Liberty Hill struggles to play defense. And if you talk to some coaches, they think it's because they don't get to practice against real offenses, or like offenses that they see on a regular basis. Like who's going to throw the ball 30, 40 times in practice to kind of teach you how to cover that stuff. Do you worry that, like, how does the Rice defense prepare and go about like figuring out what the other offenses look like when they can't really do good on good, like you mentioned, because they're playing such a unique offense that they're never going to see on an actual Saturday?
I'm not terribly concerned this year. I think the guys they have, it's the same scheme. We talked about Alway and Morris. Blake Banish is back up front. They got a bunch of guys in the secondary that have been in this system for multiple years. I think this year there's enough institutional knowledge there that they're going to be fine. I am curious to see what the ripple effects of this are a long time down the road, because I watched during spring and like, they just don't do good on good. Like very often they'll do some situational reps, but it's not, every high school, every college football program in the country is all right. We're ending our practice with a 2-minute, ones on ones or something akin to that, of like, this is how we close it. And that it just doesn't happen. So it's going to be interesting to see how good the roster is, because if you build a good roster and like Drew DeVilliers is your backup quarterback, I think you're going to be able to simulate a lot of spread, and you're going to have a good look on scout team. If you have a guy like that can throw the football and move things around and make some of those more challenging throws, if the back end of your roster is not as strong, that's where I really think you get into trouble. If you're not practicing good on goods and your back end is not very deep, then you're not going to get any looks. So yeah, I think the hope is you mitigate it with the kind of offense they run, but it's in the back of my head. I'll be honest.
Have you done a deep dive yet or looked at the schedule? Have you forecasted what you think the toughest road games or the toughest overall games are going to be? I'm looking at it right now. Looks like start off Louisiana, who is always a very tough program in the G5. Then Houston. Is this the last Bayou Bucket, by the way?
Yeah. Go yell at the people across town. Yeah. Rice is on the record is interested in renewing it.
So does that game take on a little bit more significance? I know it's a rivalry game and always has significance, but is there a little more animosity there now because it's the last one?
It's interesting because both of these rosters have turned over like completely in the past 2 years. Like there's probably only a handful of guys in Houston that have skins on the wall and experience in this game that remember, and same for Rice. So, yeah, I think it's always going to be one of the rivalries that people your teammate cares. So you care, there's going to be some hate in here. Some people are going to get antsy, but yeah, I think it being the last one, I think that's one that Rice will be particularly interested in.
What do you think? What do you think realistic expectations are for this football team in 2025 specifically?
I think everybody would be happy if they can find a way to get to a bowl game. I don't know if that's going to happen. A lot is going to depend on how long those growing pains last and if they get the quarterback right. But I think when you look at the schedule, what we've seen from the American is that most seasons there'll be a top 2 or 3 teams, and then everybody else, especially in the new look AAC, has been a 500 team. So like after your Tulanes, after maybe Navy this year with bringing their quarterback back and everything else, is there going to be anybody else that's going to be a 9 or a 10 win team? I don't know. UTSA we feel good about. So there's 3, but like I think the reality is that if Rice can go win a game that they shouldn't because this option just trips somebody up, and I don't think that's terribly hard to believe. It happens all the time. So yeah, I think you're looking at a team that can get to the postseason, and man, if you can do that in year 1, you got to be feeling pretty good about where this is heading.
What do you think about the American Athletic Conference as a whole and the level of competition and the teams that are in it? Like, I know a lot of conferences right now are going topsy-turvy and there's a lot of expansion talks, but like as where the American sits right now, what do you think about it?
I think it's got a good sampling of teams. I really do think that honestly, just the regionality for the most part is pretty decent. I wouldn't mind reworking some of the Northeast and having less travel up there. I've been told differently that that's not the problem. It's Texas, but I don't believe them.
Hey, what the hell?
Exactly. Yeah. Y'all will back me up. I think it works pretty good. I think what a lot of conferences are realizing right now and still working through is as we've gone to, there are no divisions. I think it's really hamstrung the sport to some degree. I think like this is the first year Rice has played North Texas in 3 seasons, and they play Charlotte every year. Like they've played FAU, I think every year of the past 4 years. Like that just doesn't need to happen. So I think that the makeup, the caliber of teams, the people committed to winning, their commitment to spending on NAL and things, I think they're doing a lot of right things to, vie with the Mountain West as the top G5 league. I think they could do themselves a lot more favors by not sending their teams across country to play teams that they don't care about, which is just what's going to happen when you expand these leagues.
Anytime you bring up the Rice job, the academic, prestige and just the toughness of getting kids into school, is brought up in terms of just like the biggest barriers to success. How much do you think the university is willing to kind of play ball with athletics to allow the type of players you need in there to win and to allow these coaches to like go have success?
I think the university now with the new president that came in, I guess he's not new. He's been here a couple years. I think they really are more committed to actually giving this a go than they've ever been at Rice. There's been so much institutional friction in years past. Like the example I give is in COVID when everybody shut everything down and said, we don't know when we're going to play football. Rice was the last FBS team in Texas to resume its season. They waited till halfway through the year, and that wasn't because the football team didn't want to play or they couldn't figure out how to do it safely. That's mostly because the administration said, no, we don't, it's not important enough. We're not doing it yet. That's not the case now. Like if COVID happened now, I think you'd have a lot more quicker response in getting this team back on the field. So I think that's real. And then I think also at this level with who Rice is recruiting against, I think the Rice degree, as cliche as it sounds, it matters. There's some kids that love Jeff Traylor in Texas high school football, and they're just going to go play for Jeff Traylor. That's fine. I get it. Like Jeff Traylor is a heck of a football coach, but there's a lot of other kids. Rice just landed a commitment, this past week from a guy that picked Rice over Michigan State and Oklahoma State. Like, power programs, because the difference is I can stay home, I can play in Texas, and I can get this degree. It matters to kids. So yeah, you're not going to go sign the classes that Texas and A&M are signing. It's just not going to happen. You're not going to get all the 5 stars, but if you can get the right 3 stars that care, those are the guys that typically stick. And you look at Ty Morris, who could have played just about anywhere in the state, he is still there. And I think that says something for the kind of kids that Rice is bringing in.
Before we get you out of here, Matthew, we got to ask you for a record prediction, and we're going to hold you to this. So if it's off, we're posting on Twitter and all the social medias at the end
Undefeated.
of the year.
12 and
there
out.
we go. Perfect.
Sign me
Lock
up.
it in.
No, I think this team, like I said earlier, you put them at 6-7 wins. I think everybody feels good about that. I think having to play Houston and Louisiana off the top is pretty tough. Navy's on the schedule. Memphis is on the schedule. You dodge Tulane, but you get UTSA. It's a pretty tough road as far as the top teams in the American. So I think there's just by growing pains, there's going to be some losses in there. But yeah, I think this is a team that can win 6 or 7 games and make things interesting if they trip somebody up that we aren't expecting.
Yeah, it feels like that at Charlotte game, the 4th game of the year, is a real big one. You have those 2 tough games to start off. You have Prairie View A&M. You don't want to be 1-3 going to at Navy. That feels like a big turning point game. My last question for you is about sports, the revenue share model. How do you think Rice is positioned to survive, exist alongside their peers in the AAC in terms of just revenue share, and how committed Rice is in that regard?
I think they're in. And I think it's interesting because this is something that, like, the House settlement eventually happened, but nobody in this industry was surprised. Like, this was a multi-year journey where everyone knows this is where we're going to get to. And so while leaders in college athletics have been sitting on their hands and doing nothing and waiting for the train to barrel down the tracks, everybody else has been getting ready. So, Rice had this conversation, I guess 3 or 4 years ago when NIL started becoming a thing where are we in or are we out? And if we're in, we got to be in with both feet. And that's kind of where they had the president change. Their recruiting staff was one guy when Bloomgren started. I think it's 7 or 8 full-time staffers now. They're in. And so to play ball at this level, that now requires more investment. So Rice is willing to make that investment. I think you'll see it in football. I think Rice is hoping that it's going to make a big difference in other sports, particularly in things like baseball, where they can now go and put a little bit more weight into that too.
I'm glad the Owls are getting back to being good at baseball, hopefully under Pierce, because that's part of my childhood is Rice being really good at baseball. I feel like that's something that needs to happen for the state, honestly.
Yeah, David Pierce, just again, we talk about no-brainer hires, just ready and available. Now, did I expect him to start that week? That was a new one. When I got that phone call, it's yeah, he's going to be here Friday. And I'm like, cool. No, to coach at FAU. I was like, what?
Poor
Can
Chuck.
You do that?
Poor Chuck Poole. I was messing with him over magazine stuff and needing this and needing that. And he's like, bro, we have some big stuff going on. It's I know, but I got a deadline, my friend. Chuck does.
A lot of exciting things happening down there at Houston at Rice. David Pierce for the baseball team, Scott Abel for the football team. The school is all in on athletics right now, and Matthew Bartlett's got it all covered. Check him out at The Roost on social media. He's got it locked in for Rice all the 2025 season. Matthew, thank you so much for joining us, man.
Thanks for having me, guys. Go Owls.